What's going on, guys? It's your boy Disticoder, and welcome back to another episode of Know Your Rulings. As you can see, I am not at home. I'm in Triff Gaming Studio, and I'm going to be recording my Know Your Rulings video here. So without further ado, right before we get into the rulings, don't forget to leave your ruling questions in the comment section of this video for the ruling questions of my next video. So let's get into the rulings. Alright, so this first ruling question comes to us from I Am Freeman, and they ask, "Hey Coder, my opponent activates Tri-Brigade Revolt during my turn and fully resolved. They link summon Shurag and build their chain links. Am I able to chain Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill in response to his chain, or does my Ghost Mourner have to be chain link 1? So in this case, because it is currently your turn, the way that chains are created is that you always put turn players' trigger effects on chain first, then non-turn player trigger effects, then turn player can activate quick effects, and the non-turn player can then activate quick effects, in that order. In this case, the Ghost Mourner is a trigger effect, so in this case, you would either have to choose to use your Ghost Mourner as chain link 1 before your opponent can use their Shurag or their Nerval and stuff like that, and only after you've declared your Ghost Mourner can your opponent activate their Shurag and their other Tri-Brigade monsters in the graveyard. So in this case, if you pass priority to the opponent to allow them to use their Shurag chain link 1, Nerval chain link 2, that kind of thing, you have passed the point at which you can activate the Ghost Mourner. Because it is a trigger effect on your own turn, it would have to be chain link 1. If, in the other hand, it was your opponent's turn, their Shurag would go on chain first, and then you would be able to use your Ghost Mourner. Alright, so this next ruling question comes to us from the Grust, and they ask, "Hey Coder, I have a question. How does Small World interact with question mark stats? For example, can I banish a Danger Bigfoot from my hand, then Eater of Millions from deck, and then search Grand Maju?" So in this case, you actually cannot use monsters that have question mark attack as the equal value that they have for the effect of Small World. So Small World requires that you reveal a monster from your deck and then add another monster from your deck that has only one thing in common with that other monster that you revealed. If that one thing in common is the fact that they both have question mark stats, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not consider two monsters with question mark stats as two monsters that have the same attack value. The reason why is because a question mark stat monster is considered to have undefined attack, and two monsters with undefined attack do not have the same attack value. So in this case, you would not be allowed to reveal Bigfoot, then reveal the Eater of Millions, to then in turn search the Grand Maju. Alright, this next ruling question comes to us from YGO Mango, and they ask, "So if my Relinquished Anima points to a token with undefined attack, for example a Nibiru token, if my Anima sucks it, how much attack does it have?" So in the case of Thousand Eyes Restrict, Relinquished Anima, any of these cards that take equip an opponent's monster to themselves and then gain attack equal to that monster's attack, it will always consider the original printed attack on that monster, even if it's a token. So in the case of it yoinking a token, it will entirely be determined about whether or not that card has a printed attack value on whatever card summoned that token. What this means is that in the case of a Nibiru token, the Nibiru token's original attack and defense are what is printed on the effect of Nibiru, in this case, question mark. So if your Relinquished Anima take one of your opponent's Nibiru tokens, your Anima will always have 0 attack. As opposed to if you take, for example, a Torment token summoned by Lair of Darkness, those tokens are summoned with 1,000 attack and defense. So in this case, if your Relinquished Anima take a Torment token from your opponent's side of the field, because Lair of Darkness specifically summons them with the printed text that says 1,000 attack, 1,000 defense, that is their original attack value. So in this case, if you Anima take a Torment token, your Anima would have 1,000 attack in this situation. Alright, so this next ruling question comes to us from the Gemini God, and they ask, "If I attempt to link summon a monster from my extra deck and my opponent activates the effect of Thunder King Ryo to negate the special summon by tributing itself, can I chain Called by the Grave? I'm not sure what can be activated in the attempt to summon window." So in this case, when you have an effect like Evil Zarlagia or like Thunder King Ryo, these cards have effects that can attempt to negate the summon of a monster, but they are not counter traps, so you can still chain to them. What this means, a lot of people will refer to this as the summon response window. It's not exactly the correct term, but it's a term that I think is okay to use to explain something like this. So say I go to special summon a monster from my extra deck. I link summon into, regardless whatever link monster I'd be summoning, and my opponent activates the effect of their Thunder King Ryo, you are allowed to chain the Called by the Grave. The only thing that you need to know about this summon response window that not a lot of people are very familiar with is that there can be any amount of effects activated activated in the summon response window so long as the chain begins with an effect that would attempt to negate the summon. So in the case that you attempt to like special summon Cyber Dragon, for example, and your opponent has a Thunder King Ryo, the Cyber Dragon summon is either successful or you activate something that would negate the summon of the Cyber Dragon, and then in that chain you can then activate whatever you want. You can activate a Call by the Grave, you can activate an MST or anything like that, provided that the first effect on that chain that is responding to the attempt to summon is an effect that would attempt to negate that summon. So in this case, if your opponent does activate the Thunder King Ryo, you can chain the Call by the Grave, and then you'd be allowed to chain after your Call by the Grave a Mystical Space Typhoon on a back row or something like that. Any and all effects can be activated so long as the first effect in the chain is one that attempts to negate the summon that is being performed. Alright, so this next ruling question comes to us from Medino Lima, and they ask, my opponent activates Fluffle Bear's effect to set Toy Vendor from the deck in their spell trap zone. I have an anti-spell fragrance already face up on the field. Is it possible for my opponent to activate their set Toy Vendor in their spell trap zone? So in this case, Anti-Spell Fragrance specifically says that all spell cards need to be set and cannot be activated until the turn of the player who had originally set that card. So in this case, if you set a card, even by a card effect, like something like the Fluffle Bear to set Toy Vendor, you won't be able to activate that spell card in that same turn because the effect of Anti-Spell simply says that spell cards need to be set before they can be activated on a later turn. In this case, the Fluffle Bear does indeed set the card, so it does follow the restriction of the Anti-Spell Fragrance that Toy Vendor cannot be activated until the next turn. Okay, so this last ruling question of the day comes to us from Shim Slady, and they ask, can Torrential Tribute be activated later in a chain when a monster is summoned, or does it have to be the first card activated? So a lot of people actually have this misconception about Torrential Tribute that it needs to be chain link 1 in its chain due to the fact that Torrential Tribute specifically reads when a monster is summoned rather than if a monster is summoned. All this means is that because it has the when a monster is summoned text, all that means is that Torrential Tribute can only be activated on resolution of a chain where the last action to have occurred was the summon of a monster. But if in the previous chain the last action to have occurred was the summon of a monster, Torrential Tribute can be used at any point in the following chain because that entire chain is responding to the summon of the monster that was the last action to occur before this new chain had started. So in this case, say for example your opponent normal summons a monster, has an on summon effect, you can absolutely Torrential Tribute as chain link 2, and the reason why is because this entire chain is responding to this normal summon of that monster, for example. So they normal summon an Armageddon Knight, they activate the effect of Armageddon Knight in response to that summon. Because this chain is still responding to the summon, you can chain link 2 Torrential Tribute. The same thing happens even if both players activate a ton of quick effects. Your opponent normal summons a monster, you activate a quick effect, they respond with a quick effect, you can then activate your Torrential Tribute. That is completely legal. So anyways guys, that was it for this episode of Know Your Rulings. I hope you guys learned something new. Don't forget to leave your ruling questions in the comment section of this video and say goodbye to Triff Studio. I'm only going to be here for this weekend, so this is going to be the one and only time you're going to be seeing me recording from this area. But anyways guys, I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Peace!